How do you tell your own son that the house he just sold was never his to sell? Why did I stay quiet about the second house and the $480,000 my wife left only to me, even while my son told me to pack my things? By the time we all sat together at the closing table, the papers in my lawyer's folder were already written, and the only question left was who would walk out still feeling in control. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. My name is Graham Cole. I am 63 years old. I used to be a civil engineer. I spent most of my life measuring things twice and speaking once. That habit stayed with me, even when my life stopped making sense. A week earlier, my wife Laura was no longer here. The house felt too large after that. Every room had a sound I could still hear, but it was only my mind filling the space. I moved slower, not because my legs were weak, but because my thoughts kept stopping me. That morning, I put on a dark suit I had not worn in years. It was clean, pressed, and a little stiff in the shoulders. Laura always liked things neat. I fixed my collar in the hallway mirror. I looked older than I felt. My hair had more gray than brown now. My eyes looked tired. I drove to the community hall where people were gathering to say goodbye. The sky was flat and pale, the roads were quiet. I kept both hands on the wheel, the way I did when I was teaching our son to drive. I thought of him then. Eric, 35, loud when he wanted something, friendly when other people were watching. When I arrived, Eric was already there, standing near the entrance. He was greeting people like he was the host. He shook hands and held shoulders. He smiled hard, the kind of smile that looks strong but feels thin. He saw me and walked over. He said I looked tired and that he would handle the crowd. He said I should not worry about anything today. His voice was smooth, like he was talking to a client, not to his father. I nodded. I told him I understood. Tanya was beside him. She is his wife, 33, always dressed like she expects a camera to appear. Her hair was perfect. Her nails were perfect. Her face showed the right amount of sadness, but her eyes were busy, scanning the room like she was counting. She took my hand for a second and said she was sorry for what I was going through. Then she told me she had arranged the food tables and the seating plan. She said it would be easier if I just followed along. I told her thank you. People came in waves, old neighbors, Laura's friends from the library, a few of my retired coworkers, some cousins I had not seen in years. They said kind things about Laura. They said she had a bright way of making people feel seen. They said she always remembered birthdays and small details. I listened and nodded. I tried to keep my face calm. I did not want to cry in a room full of people, not because I was ashamed, but because I did not trust myself to stop once I started. Eric gave a short talk. He spoke about family strength. He spoke about moving forward. He spoke as if he was already the man in charge of the whole story. I stood quietly to the side. A few people came to me and squeezed my arm. One older woman looked at me with pity and said I would be okay because I had Eric to take care of me. She said it like it was a relief. I forced a small smile. I said I was thankful. After the gathering, people came back to my house for coffee and food. The house was the same house I had lived in for 30 years. The porch steps creaked the same way. The hallway light still flickered unless you tapped it. The living room still smelled faintly like Laura's hand lotion. Eric walked in first. He directed people where to place coats. He told someone to move a chair. He told another person to put gifts on the dining table. He did it like the house already belonged to him. I watched from the doorway. I had this strange feeling, like I was a guest in my own home. At one point, I went to the living room to sit down. My armchair was by the window. It was the chair I used after work. Laura used to tease me about it. She said I had shaped it to fit my body. Eric was sitting in it. Not by mistake, not because there were no other seats. He was sitting there with one ankle on his knee, leaning back. He was talking to two men about property prices. He laughed and said the neighborhood had become valuable. When he saw me, he did not stand. He patted the arm of the chair and said I could take the couch. The couch. It was not a huge insult on paper. It was just a seat. But I knew the meaning. Everyone in the room saw it too. A few people looked away quickly. One man gave me a small, awkward nod, like he was apologizing without speaking. I walked to the couch and sat down. I folded my hands. I kept my breathing even. I told myself it was not the day for a fight. I told myself Laura would have wanted peace, not noise. In the kitchen, Tanya was busy but not really working. She stood near the counter and watched other people move plates and cups. She gave instructions, then stepped aside. She talked softly to a younger woman, someone I did not recognize. They both glanced at me more than once. I heard Tanya say that a big house was too much for one older man. She said it would be safer for me in a managed building. She said it would be better for everyone if the house was sold and the money was put to good use. The younger woman asked what I thought. Tanya answered for me. She said I would agree once I calmed down. I pretended I did not hear. I picked up cups and rinsed them. My hands kept moving because if I stopped, my mind would start spiraling. Later, I stepped out to the patio in the backyard. The air was cold but clean. The yard was quiet. The grass needed trimming. Laura used to remind me about that. She liked the yard simple and tidy. Caleb, my neighbor, came out with 2 cups of coffee. He is retired now, like me. He used to do accounting for a small firm. He has a calm face and steady eyes. He does not speak much, but when he does, it matters. He handed me a cup and stood beside me, looking at the yard like he was giving me space. After a moment, he said Eric had asked him something the day before. He said Eric asked what houses in this area were selling for now. He said Eric sounded excited, like he had a plan already. Caleb did not say it with drama. He said it like a fact. I held the coffee cup with both hands. The warmth helped. I told Caleb I appreciated him telling me. Caleb gave a small nod. He said people get strange when they see money and opportunity. He did not say Eric was bad. He did not need to. We went back inside. The living room was loud. People were talking over each other. Someone turned on music at a low volume. Tanya was taking pictures near the fireplace, moving people into better light. She asked Eric to stand closer to her. She asked me to stand on the side. She said it would look better. I stood on the side. As the afternoon went on, I noticed how Eric answered questions that were meant for me. If someone asked how I was doing, Eric said I was holding up. If someone asked what I needed, Eric said I needed rest and help with decisions. If someone asked about my plans, Tanya smiled and said they would take care of everything. No one looked at me after that. They looked at Eric. They looked at Tanya. They nodded like my life was now a group project. At one point, Eric tapped a spoon against a glass to get attention. He said he wanted to thank everyone for coming. He said Laura would have been proud. He said family must stick together and be practical. He said big changes were coming and he would make sure I was not alone. He spoke slowly and clearly, like he was making an announcement in a meeting. I watched the faces in the room. Some people looked touched, some looked uneasy. A few looked like they already believed I was helpless. Eric then said he and Tanya would help me move somewhere smaller soon. He said it was the smart thing. He said this house was too much for me. He said we could not let me sit here and fall apart. He said it as if it was settled. I felt something tighten in my chest. Not anger, something colder. A kind of clear focus. I looked at Eric. I looked at Tanya. They were smiling like they were doing a good deed. Tanya's hand rested on Eric's arm like she was steadying him, like he was being brave. I stood up from the couch. I kept my voice calm. I said I appreciated their concern. I said I would think about everything when the house was quiet again. Eric smiled wider. He said that was good. He said they would start looking at options right away. I nodded again. As people began to leave, Tanya hugged me and said I should get some sleep. She said she would come by in a few days to help organize. She said she would bring boxes. I told her thank you. By early evening, the house finally emptied. The silence returned like a heavy blanket. There were plates in the sink, napkins on the coffee table, chairs slightly out of place. The air smelled like coffee, perfume, and outside cold. I walked through the room slowly, turning off lights. In the living room, I paused by the armchair. Eric had left it pushed back like he had claimed it and then abandoned it. I adjusted it back into place. Not because it mattered, but because I needed one small thing to be where it belonged. Then I went to my bedroom, to the small desk Laura used for bills and notes. The lamp cast a warm circle of light on the surface. Her pen cup was still there. Her little calendar was still there. I sat down and opened my phone to check the date. My screen showed a reminder that had been set weeks ago. It was a meeting with Nina, Laura's lawyer. The reminder title was short and plain, like Laura always was when she wrote important things. It said to talk to Nina about the house and the plan. I stared at the words for a long time. I did not feel ready for any plan. I did not feel ready for anything, but I also knew something simple. Eric and Tanya were already moving without me, so I pressed confirm. Then I set the phone down, closed my eyes, and listened to the house breathe in the dark. I woke up the next morning on my side of the bed. The other side was still made, like it had been for a week. I lay there for a minute and listened to the house. There was no kettle sound, no soft steps in the hallway, no small hum from Laura when she did simple tasks. I got up and made coffee. I did not eat much. My stomach felt tight, like it was trying to protect itself. I cleaned the kitchen slowly. I wiped counters that were already clean. I rinsed cups even though the sink was empty. I needed my hands to do something. Later, I sat in my home office and looked at the room as if I was seeing it for the first time. I saw Laura's desk lamp. I saw her small notebook with neat lines. I saw the calendar with her careful handwriting. I saw the old file box in the corner, the one she used when she did taxes and house papers. I thought about the way our life started. Laura and I met when we were both working too much. I was building my career. She was managing a small team at a local library. She was quiet in a way that felt warm, not empty. She listened with full attention. When she spoke, it was simple and direct. When we married, we were not rich. We had a plan instead. We bought our first small place and fixed it little by little. I did repairs on weekends. Laura handled bills and schedules. She kept everything organized without making it feel heavy. When Eric was young, we tried to give him a stable home. Laura made the house feel safe. I worked long hours. I wanted Eric to have options. I wanted him to feel proud of his family. Eric was smart, but he learned early how to use a room. When he was a teenager, he started speaking with confidence even when he did not know much. Adults liked it. Teachers called him a leader. He got praise for being bold. At first, I was proud. Then I began to notice a pattern. If Eric wanted something, he asked with a smile. If he did not get it, he acted hurt. He did not yell. He did not break things. He just made the house feel tense until someone gave in. Laura saw it too. She did not call it out in front of him. She talked to me at night. She said we needed to teach him limits while he was still young. I said he would grow out of it. I said life would humble him. I said we should not be too hard. I was wrong. When Eric was in his 20s, he moved out and jumped from job to job. He talked about big goals. He talked about starting a business. He said he did not want a normal life. He wanted a fast one. He wanted to be seen. He came back often, not for dinner, but for support. He said he needed help with rent for a few months. He said he needed help with a car repair. He said he needed help with a business deposit. Each time, he promised it was the last time. Laura kept notes, not to shame him, just to keep track. She told me it was not healthy to give money without a plan. She said love did not mean open access. I said he was our son. I said he would pay us back. I said family helps family. Then Tanya arrived. Eric brought her to the house like he was bringing a prize. She was charming in the beginning. She complimented Laura's cooking. She said our home felt classic and strong. She asked questions about the neighborhood. She asked how long we had owned the property. She asked what homes were selling for nearby. I thought it was small talk. Laura's face stayed polite, but her eyes turned sharp for half a second. Later, when we were alone, Laura said Tanya was counting, not bonding. She said Tanya looked at our life like a resource. I told Laura she might be reading too much into it. Over the next year, Tanya's style became clearer. She did not like maybe answers. She liked plans and control. She talked about social circles and appearances. She spoke about work and money with an edge, like it was a contest. Eric changed around her. He became louder. He started speaking to me like I was a colleague, not his father. He started giving advice I did not ask for. He said I needed to take more risks. He said I needed to stop living small. Laura stayed calm. She was kind to Tanya, but she set boundaries. If Tanya tried to rearrange the kitchen, Laura said it was not needed. If Tanya tried to speak over her, Laura waited and then finished her thought anyway. Laura was gentle, but she was not weak. That balance worked for a while. Then Laura became unwell. It did not happen all at once. It started with tiredness that did not go away. Then appointments, then long days, then a hospital corridor that became too familiar. I remember one afternoon in the hospital. I was holding 2 cups of tea, one for Laura and one for me. The corridor lights were bright and cold. Laura sat in a chair, wrapped in a soft blanket. She looked small in that moment, but her eyes were clear. She told me, in a quiet voice, that people show their true shape when they think the rules are gone. She said I needed to promise her something. She said I had to protect myself, even from family, if family stopped acting like family. I tried to laugh it off. I said Eric would never go that far. Laura did not argue. She just watched me for a long moment. Then she said she had handled some things on paper, just in case. She said she wanted me to meet Nina, the lawyer, when the time was right. She said it was not about fear, it was about order. I asked her why she felt the need. She said she had seen how Tanya talked about the house. She said she had seen how Eric listened to Tanya more than to his own sense. She said she wanted me to have a quiet door to walk through if people tried to trap me in guilt. Back then, I did not fully understand. I was focused on Laura's care. I was focused on getting through each week. I assumed my son would step up in the right way when needed. Instead, Eric and Tanya stepped closer, like they were moving toward a prize. During Laura's last months, Eric visited more often. People might think that means he cared more, but his visits had a certain rhythm. He came when other people were there. He liked to be seen bringing flowers. He liked to be seen hugging his mother. He liked the praise. When we were alone, Eric talked about logistics. He said we needed to think ahead. He said we needed to consider what would happen with the house. He said he did not want me living alone in such a big place. He said Tanya could help me adjust. I told him Laura was still here. I told him we were focusing on her comfort, not property plans. He nodded, but he kept returning to it, like a dog returning to a bone. Tanya visited too, but she did not sit quietly with Laura. She asked questions that felt like business. She asked if the house had been updated. She asked if there were any loans on it. She asked if Laura had written anything down. Laura smiled politely. Laura said those matters were handled. After one visit, when Tanya left, Laura told me she wanted to speak to Nina soon. She said she needed to put her voice into the system because she could not trust people to remember her wishes when the room got loud. I agreed. I still did not think it would come to this. I thought Eric would grieve, and grief would soften him. I thought he would remember childhood, not money. Then Laura was gone, and the noise started right away. In the first week, Eric took over phone calls. He said he was helping. He said it was too much for me. He told people that I was not thinking clearly. He said he would manage details. Some people believed him because he sounded confident. Tanya started sending me messages about downsizing. She said it would be healthy for me to simplify. She said the house was a weight. She said I needed a fresh start. I noticed how she used soft words for hard aims. She did not say she wanted the money. She said she wanted what was best for me. She did not say she wanted control. She said she wanted to reduce stress. Eric echoed her. He said they would take care of everything. He said I should rest. He said I should trust them. Trust. That word started to feel strange. One afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table and looked at the family photo on the wall. It showed Laura smiling, Eric in a graduation cap, and me in my work jacket. In the photo, Eric looked like a boy who still needed guidance. In real life, he acted like a man who thought guidance was a weakness. I remembered a moment from years ago. Eric was about 19. He had been talking about the house like it was already his. He said that one day he would renovate it and make it modern. He said he would raise his kids there. He said it like a claim. I had laughed at the time. I had told him to focus on school first. Laura had not laughed. She had looked at him and said he should never speak as if something belonged to him before it truly did. Eric had smiled and said he understood, but he did not change. Now, sitting alone in the kitchen, I understood Laura's concern in a new way. It was not about money alone. It was about respect. It was about someone seeing you as an obstacle instead of a person. That night, I found one of Laura's old envelopes in the file box. Her handwriting was on the front. It was not addressed to Eric. It was not addressed to Tanya. It was addressed to me. I did not open it right away. I just held it and felt the paper bend slightly under my fingers. It felt like Laura had left a hand on my shoulder. I put the envelope back and looked at the calendar reminder again. The meeting with Nina was coming soon. For the first time since Laura left, I felt something steady under my sadness. Not rage, not panic, just a clear line. If Eric and Tanya were going to treat my life like a project, then I would stop speaking in feelings and start speaking in structure. I would not shout, I would not plead, I would simply step into the systems they respected. The next few days moved in a strange way. Time felt thick, like I was walking through water. People kept sending messages that sounded kind, but they did not ask what I needed. They told me what I needed. They told me what was best. They told me what was practical. Eric called twice a day. He said he was checking in. He said he did not want me to sit alone with my thoughts. He said he would come by to help me make a plan. Each time his voice had the same tone, like he had already decided what the plan was. Tanya sent shorter messages. She wrote like someone organizing a project. She said she could bring boxes. She said she knew a good moving company. She said she knew a place nearby with good support. She used the same phrase again and again about support, about safety, about simplicity. I replied with calm words. I said I appreciated their concern. I said I was taking things one day at a time. I did not argue. I did not refuse. I kept my answers small and neutral. On the fourth day, Eric said they wanted to have dinner at their townhouse. He said it would be good for me to get out of the house. He said they had something to discuss, nothing heavy, just planning. I drove there just before sunset. Their street looked new and polished, with the same plants outside every door. The townhouse was bright inside, with white walls and carefully placed decorations. Everything looked staged, like it was waiting for approval. Eric opened the door with a big smile and a firm handshake. He said he was glad I came. Tanya hugged me quickly and said she made a healthy meal, something light. She said I needed to take care of my body. We sat at their dining table. The food smelled fine, but I could tell neither of them cared about dinner. They cared about the moment after dinner when they could shift into their real purpose. Eric asked how I was sleeping. I said I was sleeping in short blocks. He nodded like he was taking notes. Tanya asked if I was eating enough. I said I was trying. She gave a serious look like a nurse, then glanced at Eric as if to say she was managing the situation. After a few bites, Tanya stood up and went to the living room. She returned with a laptop and a folder. She placed them on the table with a careful smile. Eric leaned forward, ready. Tanya said she wanted to show me something to reduce stress. She said planning would make me feel calmer. She said structure was kindness. She opened a spreadsheet. It had columns and clean lines. At the top, there was a title that said Next Steps. Under it, I saw numbers, dates, and a list of apartments. I saw a line that said House Sale Estimate. I saw another line that said Funds for Upgrade. They spoke as if I was not reading what I was reading. Eric said he knew I did not want to think about big changes, but it was better to act early. He said he did not want me stuck in a home that was too big. He said the neighborhood was valuable right now. He said it would be a shame to miss the best window. Tanya said she researched places for me. She said one building had security and activities. She said I could meet people. She said it would be healthier than staying in a quiet house full of memories. Then she said something that made the air feel colder. She said it would be better for everyone if I signed paperwork quickly so Eric could handle the process without me having to attend meetings. I looked at her and then at Eric. Eric nodded as if it was normal. He said it was standard. He said it would save time. He said it would help me avoid stress. I asked what paperwork they meant. Eric said it was just permission to speak for me, nothing more. He said he would not do anything without my approval. He said he simply needed the ability to move fast when needed. Tanya added that she already spoke with a real estate agent. She said the agent was a friend. She said they had buyers who were always looking in my area. She said it could all be smooth if we did not overthink it. Overthink it. That phrase landed in my chest like a small weight. It was not a shout. It was not even rude. But it carried a clear message. My thoughts were an obstacle. My questions were a problem. My ownership was treated like paperwork that needed to be pushed aside. I did not raise my voice. I did not make a scene. I placed my fork down and folded my hands. I told them I understood they were trying to help. I told them I would consider options. I told them I was not ready to sign anything that night. Eric's smile tightened. He said there was no need to be stubborn. He said I was emotional and that was normal. He said he would guide me through it. Tanya tilted her head and said she did not want me to get overwhelmed. She said older people sometimes feel defensive when life changes. She said it was part of the process. I looked at their faces. They both looked confident. They both looked like they believed their own story. That was the moment something shifted inside me. It was not anger. It was not grief. It was clarity. I saw that they were not asking. They were moving. I finished dinner politely. I thanked Tanya for the food. I told them I needed to get back home early. I said I was tired. Eric walked me to the door and said we should meet the agent soon, just to learn facts. He said knowledge would help me feel safer. He said he would set it up. I told him I would think about it. The next afternoon, he texted me an address and a time. He said the agent could fit us in. He said it was better not to delay. He said the market was active. I went. The real estate office had large photos of houses on the walls. The receptionist smiled and asked who I was meeting. I said the agent's name. She pointed to a seating area. Eric and Tanya were already there. Tanya waved me over like I was late. Eric stood up, shook my hand, and said he was glad I came. He spoke loudly enough for the receptionist to hear, like he wanted the room to notice he was the one leading. The agent came out, a woman in her 40s with sharp glasses and quick steps. She greeted Eric first. Then Tanya. Then she turned to me last and asked if I was Graham. I said yes. The agent led us into a small office. She sat across from Eric and Tanya, not across from me. She placed a folder on the desk and pulled out a page of numbers. She started talking about list prices, about staging, about timelines. Eric nodded and asked questions like he was the owner. He asked about quick sales. He asked about closing dates. He asked if the agent had buyers ready. Tanya asked about how to present the house online. She asked about photos and lighting. She asked about curb appeal. Then the agent asked a simple question. She asked whose name was on the property. Eric answered fast. He said it was the family's. He said he was handling it with his father. He said they would get signatures. The agent nodded like that was enough. I watched her pen move. I watched her write Eric's phone number at the top of the page, not mine. I watched her build a plan around him. I did not interrupt. I did not correct the room. I let them talk. I let them stack their assumptions higher and higher. At the end, the agent said she could start preparing materials right away. She said she would need documentation soon, but she could draft an agreement. Eric smiled and said they would bring everything. On the way out, Tanya said she felt relieved. She said action was healing. She said the sooner we moved, the sooner I could start a new chapter. She said it with a bright voice, like she was selling me my own future. I drove home alone. The inside of my car felt quiet and honest compared to that office. My hands stayed steady on the wheel. My face stayed calm. But my mind was moving fast. I parked in my driveway and sat for a minute before going inside. I looked at my front door. I looked at the windows Laura used to clean every spring. I looked at the porch where she liked to sit with tea. I walked into the house and the silence met me again. It did not feel empty in the same way now. It felt like a space where I could hear my own thoughts without noise. I went straight to my home office. I pulled the file box closer. I took out the envelope with Laura's handwriting. This time, I opened it. Inside was a short note. Laura's writing was neat and careful. She wrote that she loved me. She wrote that she trusted me. She wrote that I should not feel guilty for protecting myself. She wrote that some people confuse family with access. There was also a single page with an address written on it, and a few words that said it was a second place, quiet and paid for, meant to give me room to breathe. There was a name underneath, Nina. I sat very still with that paper in my hands. I did not feel excited. I did not feel relieved. I felt steady, like someone had placed a level tool on the table and shown me the true angle of the situation. Eric and Tanya were not helping me make decisions. They were positioning me for their decision. I put the note back in the envelope and placed it in a drawer. Then I opened my phone and found Nina's contact. Before I pressed call, I looked around the room. I saw the filing cabinet with labels in Laura's handwriting. I saw the desk where she paid bills. I saw the calendar reminder she had set for me. I understood why she did it. She knew how people can act when they believe the rules are gone. She knew I would hesitate. She knew I needed a quiet push. I pressed call. Nina answered in a calm voice. She said my name and asked how I was holding up. I told her I was managing. I told her I needed to meet. I told her it was about the house and the plan Laura mentioned. There was a short pause. Nina said she understood. She said she could see me the next morning. She said I should bring any documents I had and any questions I wanted answered. She said it would be handled properly. I thanked her and ended the call. That night, I did not sleep well, but I did not feel lost. I felt like I was standing on a road with clear signs again. Eric and Tanya believed I was drifting. They believed they could steer me with pressure and polite words. They did not know that Laura had left me a map, and they did not know I had finally decided to read it. The next morning, I arrived at Nina's office 10 minutes early. The building was quiet. The hallway smelled like paper and coffee. I sat in the waiting area and watched the second hand of the wall clock move in small steps. Nina came out and greeted me with a steady face. She said she was sorry for my loss in a simple, respectful way. She did not use big phrases. She did not try to make me feel better with cheap comfort. She just spoke like a person who understood that some moments cannot be fixed with words. She invited me into her office. The room was clean and calm. Books were lined up by topic. A small plant sat near the window. There were framed certificates on the wall, but they did not feel like a show. They felt like proof of long work. Nina asked me what had been happening since the service. I told her about Eric and Tanya. I told her about the dinner at their townhouse. I told her about the real estate office. I told her about the way they spoke as if everything was already decided. Nina listened without interrupting. She made notes. When I finished, she asked if they had asked me to sign anything. I told her they wanted me to sign papers to let Eric act for me. Nina nodded once. She said I did the right thing by not signing anything. She said I should not sign anything without her reading it first. She said some documents are written in ways that sound harmless but give away control. I told her I understood. Then she asked if I brought Laura's note. I gave her the envelope. Nina opened it carefully and read in silence. She did not smile. She did not look shocked. She looked like someone who had expected this kind of care from Laura. Nina said Laura had planned for stability. She said Laura wanted to make sure I had choices, even if family pressure became heavy. She said the paperwork was already arranged in a way that protected me. She said I did not need to argue with anyone to stay safe. She said I only needed to avoid signing away my own position. I asked her what I should do next. Nina said the first step was simple. She said I should stay calm and keep things quiet. She said I should not announce anything to Eric and Tanya. She said people who feel entitled tend to push harder when they sense resistance. She said I should let them show their behavior clearly. Then she asked me to describe in detail what Eric and Tanya had been saying and texting. She said words matter because words show intent and pattern. She said I should save everything. I told her I had not deleted messages. I told her I could print them. Nina said that was good. She told me to make copies and store them in 2 places. She said I should keep a simple timeline. She said dates matter when stories start changing. She also told me something that landed quietly but firmly. She said no one can sell my home without my clear approval. She said no one can act for me unless I allow it in the proper way. She said if anyone tries to rush me, that is a warning sign. I sat back and let those words sink in. I felt my shoulders drop a little. Not because pain disappeared, but because confusion started to clear. Before I left, Nina told me to do 3 practical things. She said I should check my bank accounts and access. She said I should remove any extra cards I had given out. She said I should request a record of recent activity. She said it was not about revenge. She said it was about control and safety. I told her I would do it. When I walked out of her office, the air outside felt sharper. Cars moved down the street like normal. People carried bags and talked into phones. The world did not pause for private grief. It just kept moving. For the first time in days, I felt able to move with it instead of being dragged. I drove straight to my bank. The branch was bright and quiet. A clerk greeted me at a desk and asked how they could help. I told them I wanted to review account access and request recent statements. The clerk asked for my identification and then pulled up my profile. They spoke in a calm voice, like this was a normal thing, because it was. That helped me. It made it feel less emotional and more practical. I asked which cards were active on my accounts. The clerk listed them. I heard Eric's name. My face stayed neutral. I told the clerk I wanted to remove that access. I said it was no longer needed. The clerk nodded and said they could do that immediately. They asked if I wanted a printed record of recent transactions. I said yes. A printer behind the desk started to work. The sound was steady and mechanical. Page after page slid out and stacked neatly. I did not read every line at the counter. I just looked for patterns. I saw purchases that did not match my life. I saw a few larger charges that made my mouth dry. They were not from groceries or bills. They looked like someone treating my account like a tool. I did not make a scene. I thanked the clerk. I put the pages into a plain folder. I walked out. Back in my car, I sat for a moment with both hands on the steering wheel. I felt a heavy sadness, but it was not only sadness, it was also clarity. Eric was not just planning to move me, he was already acting like my resources were his. When I returned home, I went to my office and opened a drawer. I found a stack of empty folders from old work projects. I wrote simple labels on them with a black marker. Messages, bank, property, timeline. I kept the words plain. I did not need drama, I needed order. I printed the text messages from Tanya, I printed the ones from Eric, I printed the group chat messages too, I placed them in the folder with dates written at the top. I added short notes on sticky paper like dinner at townhouse and real estate office visit. Then I opened my laptop and typed a timeline in a simple document. I wrote the date of the service. I wrote the date of the dinner. I wrote the date of the real estate meeting. I wrote the date of my visit to Nina and the bank. As I worked, I felt something familiar in my mind. It was the old work part of me, the engineer part, the part that does not guess, the part that measures and checks. That evening, Eric called. He asked how my day was. I told him it was quiet. He asked if I had thought more about moving. I said I was still thinking. Eric said the market was active and we should not wait too long. He said he had spoken to the agent again. He said she could line up buyers quickly. I told him I understood. He then said Tanya wanted to come by the next day with boxes to start packing. He said it would help me feel progress. I said I was not ready for that yet. Eric's voice tightened. He said I was making it harder than it needed to be. He said I should trust him. He said I should stop resisting help. I kept my voice even. I said I was not resisting help. I said I simply needed time. Eric gave a short laugh and said time was not free. He said delays cost money. He said I did not want to waste the chance. I told him I would let him know when I was ready. After the call, I stared at my phone for a long moment. I did not feel the urge to call back or argue. I felt the urge to document. So I opened my timeline document and added a line about the call with the date and time. The next afternoon, Tanya sent a message. She wrote that she had already ordered boxes online. She wrote that they would arrive at my house. She wrote that she arranged a moving company to give an estimate. She wrote that the agent wanted to schedule photos soon. She wrote all of this as if I had agreed. I replied with a short sentence. I said I had not approved any packing or photos. I said I would decide after I met with Nina again. Tanya replied quickly. She said she was trying to reduce my stress. She said I was being difficult. She said she was worried about me making poor choices while emotional. I read her message twice. I noticed how she framed it. She did not say I owned the decision. She said my emotions were a problem. She said her control was care. I saved the message and printed it. 2 days later, a courier envelope arrived at my door. It was thick and official looking. It had a return address from a local office service. I carried it to my desk and opened it slowly. Inside were papers. The first page had a title in bold letters. It was written in formal language. It described giving someone authority to act on my behalf for property matters. Eric's name was typed in the center of the page. I did not read it like a victim. I read it like a man reading a contract he did not request. My hands stayed steady. My breathing stayed slow. I placed the papers on the desk and took a photo of the first page, just in case. Then I put the papers into the folder I labeled Property. A minute later, Eric texted me. He wrote that the papers were standard and that I should sign them so he could handle the sale smoothly. He wrote that he would come by the next day to pick them up. I did not answer right away. I called Nina instead. Nina answered and asked if I had received anything. I told her I had. I told her what it was. Nina said I should not sign it. She said I should bring it to her office. She said she would respond in the proper way if needed. I told her I would bring it the next morning. That night, I did not feel scared. I felt alert. Eric and Tanya were moving faster. That meant they believed the door was already open. They believed I would eventually step aside. I walked through the house before bed and looked at small things. Laura's scarf still hung near the coat rack. A book she was reading was still on the side table. A dish towel with faded stripes still hung by the sink. These details made my throat tighten, but they also made me feel grounded. This was my life, not a prize, not a project, not a resource. Before I turned off the light in my office, I looked at the folders lined up on the desk. They were simple, they were quiet, they were not dramatic, but they were real. In that moment, I understood something important. Eric and Tanya were not my biggest problem. The biggest problem was the old version of me that kept hoping people would behave well if I stayed polite enough. That version of me had done its job for decades. It built a home, it raised a son, it supported a marriage. Now a different version of me needed to take the lead. The version that uses clear steps, the version that lets systems speak when emotions get used as a weapon. I turned off the lamp and went to bed. I kept my phone on the nightstand. Not because I was waiting for a fight, but because I was ready to record the truth as it happened. The next morning, I brought the papers to Nina. I kept them flat in a folder, like they were just another set of forms from the mail. Nina did not look surprised when she read the first page. She looked focused. She said the wording was wider than it needed to be. She said it did not just let Eric speak for me, it would let him act for me. She said that kind of document can open doors that do not close easily. I told her I had not signed anything. Nina said that was good. She said I should not argue with Eric about it. She said I should simply not sign. She said if Eric kept pushing, it would only add to the pattern. Then Nina asked me a question that felt simple but important. She asked what I wanted. No one had asked me that since Laura was gone. I sat quietly and thought. I said I wanted peace. I said I wanted my home to be treated with respect. I said I wanted my future to be mine, not a plan someone else made for me. I said I still loved my son, but I did not feel safe with him leading my life. Nina nodded. She said feelings matter, but structure matters more when people start pushing. She said we could build structure around my wishes. We talked through options. Nina spoke in calm steps. She said I could keep living in the family house if I wanted. She said I could move to another place if that felt better. She said what mattered was that the choice stayed mine. She also said there was another issue. She said I needed to protect my money and access while things were tense. She said I should assume Eric and Tanya would keep moving fast. She said speed often means a person is trying to get ahead of consent. I told her I understood. Before I left, Nina said she would prepare a few things for me to sign later that day. She said it would keep my affairs clean and simple. She said she would handle filings through the proper channels. She said I did not need to announce anything to Eric and Tanya. She said the best way to stay calm was to let professionals do their part. I went to the park after that. It was cold, and the trees were bare. I sat on a bench with my hands in my coat pockets and watched people walk their dogs. A child ran ahead of his parent and then came back, checking the distance like he did not want to lose the connection. I thought about Laura again. I remembered how she used to watch people too, quietly, and then tell me later what she noticed. She always saw patterns before others did. She was gentle, but she was not blind. I realized I had been gentle in a way that sometimes became permission. I had let Eric treat my patience like a weakness. I had let Tanya treat my grief like confusion. I had kept the peace so long that they started to believe peace meant surrender. Sitting there, I made a decision. I was done trying to convince them with words. I would handle it properly, through the systems they respected, through rules and records, through clear steps. That afternoon, I returned to Nina's office. She had a small stack of papers ready. She explained them in plain language. She said they were meant to protect me and to define what happens with my assets in the future. She said it would reduce risk. She said it would also reduce pressure, because it would remove the idea that Eric could push me into quick decisions. I listened. I asked questions. Nina answered without rushing. Then I signed where she told me to sign. I did not study every line in the room, because Nina was explaining it clearly and because I trusted her work. But I understood the meaning. I was putting my choices into a structure that could not be argued with at the dinner table. Nina said she would record what needed to be recorded. She said some parts would take a short time to process through the usual offices, but she said the direction was now set. She said I should keep my calm voice with Eric, because calm voices make impatient people show their true shape. On the way home, I stopped at the bank again. I asked the clerk for help setting my accounts up in a safer way. I told them I wanted to limit access and create a separate account for regular bills. I told them I did not want extra cards attached. I told them I wanted alerts for movements above a certain amount. The clerk nodded and helped me without drama. That was the strange comfort of institutions. They do not care who is trying to pressure you. They care what the rules say. They care what your signature says. When I got home, I found boxes on my porch. Tanya's boxes. She had ordered them like she said she would. The delivery label had my address and her name. She had used my house as her supply drop. I carried the boxes inside and stacked them in the hallway. Then I took a photo of the labels and added it to my folder. Not because I wanted a fight, but because I wanted a clear record of what was happening. Eric called that evening. He asked if the boxes arrived. I told him they did. He sounded pleased, like he had scored a point. He said he and Tanya would come on Saturday with tape and markers. He said they would start packing the house. He said the agent wanted to schedule photos soon, and it would help if the house looked ready. I told him I appreciated the effort, but I was not ready for a packing team in my home. Eric said he did not understand why I was slowing things down. He said I was making it harder than it needed to be. He said he was trying to protect me from stress. I told him I was protecting myself by moving at my own pace. There was a pause. Then he said Tanya was worried about me living alone. He said neighbors were not enough. He said I needed family close. I told him I heard him. After the call, I walked into my bedroom and looked at the closet. Laura's side was still mostly untouched. I had not been able to sort her things yet. That felt like a different kind of grief. It was not only sadness. It was the fear that if I packed it, I was admitting she would not walk back in. But I did not pack Laura's things that night. I packed mine. I started with the small items that mattered most. My old notebook from work, the one where I drew bridge supports and wrote calculations, Laura's note in its envelope, my personal documents, a few photos that felt private and important. I placed them in a plain bag, not in Tanya's boxes. The next day, I drove to the address Laura had written for me. It was a small house on a quiet street. Not far, but far enough to feel like a different life. The yard was simple. The place looked modest and solid, like it was built to last without showing off. I unlocked the door with a key Nina had arranged for me. Inside, it smelled like closed rooms and clean paint. The floors were plain. The kitchen was small. The living room had enough space for a couch and a chair. It was not a dream house. It was a safe house. I stood in the doorway for a long moment. I could almost hear Laura's voice in my head, telling me this was not running away. This was having a choice. I brought my bag inside and placed it in a bedroom closet. I did not decorate. I did not pretend I was starting a bright new chapter. I just made a quiet base, a place where no one could barge in with boxes and speeches. On the way back, I stopped at the cafe and saw Caleb. He asked how I was holding up. I told him I was taking steps. He looked at my face and seemed to understand without needing details. He said, softly, that he had seen sons like Eric before. He said some people treat a parent's kindness like a blank check. He said the best way to teach them is not a lecture. It is a boundary that does not move. I nodded. At home, I found more messages in the family group chat. Tanya had written that Saturday was packing day and that everyone should come help. She added smiling symbols and talk about fresh starts. It read like a cheerful event invite. I replied with one line. I said no one should come pack my house without my approval. Tanya replied fast. She said I was overreacting. She said people were only trying to support me. She said I needed to accept help. Eric replied after that. He wrote that I was making the family look disorganized. He wrote that buyers do not wait forever. He wrote that I needed to think of the future. I did not argue in the group chat. I did not explain myself. I only saved the messages and added them to my folder. Saturday came and they still showed up. Eric's car pulled into my driveway first. Tanya's car followed. They stepped out with energy, like they were arriving at a job site. Tanya carried tape and markers. Eric carried a clipboard with printed pages. I opened the door and stepped onto the porch. I kept my voice calm. I told them they could not pack my home today. Eric blinked like he did not expect me to say it plainly. He said they drove all the way here to help. He said I was being stubborn. He said I was letting grief make me unreasonable. I told him grief did not cancel ownership. I told him I would decide what happens in my home. Tanya stepped forward and said she did not want me living in the past. She said the house was too big and unsafe for one person. She said it was time to accept reality. I told her reality was that this was my home and they needed to leave. Eric's face changed. He looked embarrassed, like he could imagine a neighbor watching. He lowered his voice and said we should handle this privately. He said we could talk inside. I told him we could talk another day in a calmer setting and not with boxes in their hands. They stood there for a moment. Tanya looked at Eric like she wanted him to push harder. Eric looked at me and seemed to measure something. He finally said they would go for now, but he said we could not delay much longer. I nodded once. I said I understood he felt pressure. They left the boxes on my porch and drove away. That evening, Nina called and said the next steps were set. She said there would be a meeting soon connected to the house sale Eric had been talking about. She said I should attend, even if Eric did not expect me to. She said it was better to be present when people try to move fast. I told her I would be there. The night before the meeting, I packed a few more things into my car, only what I needed. I left the house mostly looking normal. I did not strip it down. I did not make it look abandoned. I simply made sure my personal life was not sitting out in the open for someone else to box up. In the morning, I put on a clean shirt and a plain jacket. I drove slowly, arrived early, and parked. I walked into the building with Nina's number in my phone and a thin folder in my hand. I sat in a chair in the lobby and waited, calm and still, while the world around me moved like it always does. My name is Graham Cole. I was sitting in the lobby with my folder on my lap when the receptionist stood up and looked around the room. She called my full name first. She said the closer was ready. Eric arrived at that same moment. Tanya was beside him. Behind them was a young couple holding a thin binder and a set of keys on a ring. The couple looked excited and nervous, like people do when they think they are about to step into a new life. Eric looked confident. Tanya looked pleased, like a plan was finally becoming real. Eric saw me stand up. His face tightened for half a second. Then he smiled and acted like this was normal. He said he was glad I came, like he had invited me on purpose. Tanya nodded and said it was good that I was involved. Nina stepped into the lobby from the hallway. She greeted me with a small nod. She did not greet Eric like family. She greeted him like a person who had been mentioned in a file. We walked into the closing room together. The room had glass walls and a long table. The closer was seated with papers arranged in neat stacks. A small printer sat on a side cabinet. The real estate agent was there too, with a bright smile that looked a little forced. The agent greeted Eric first again, then Tanya, then the buyers. She looked at me last and hesitated, like she was trying to place my role in her story. The closer introduced himself and said he would confirm identities and review the file. He asked for my identification first. I handed it over. He looked at it and then looked at the top page of his packet. His eyes moved slowly across the line where the owner name was printed. He paused. He did not speak for a moment. Eric started talking to fill the space. He said this was all straightforward and that we should move quickly because everyone had busy schedules. He said he had already explained the plan to everyone. The closer held up one finger in a calm way. He said he needed to confirm authority before any signing could happen. He said the records showed the property belonged to me alone. He said he could not accept signatures from anyone else unless there was a valid document giving them that authority. Eric laughed lightly and said he had that. He said it was being handled within the family. He said it was just paperwork. The closer asked to see it. Eric reached into his bag and pulled out the same document that had arrived by courier. I recognized it right away. It was still unsigned. He slid it across the table like it was already done. The closer looked at the signature line and then looked up. He said it was not signed. He said it was not effective. He said he could not proceed. Tanya leaned forward and said this was a misunderstanding. She said grief had made things slow. She said they were only trying to help me. The buyers looked confused. The young woman asked what that meant for them. The young man asked if they had taken time off work for nothing. The agent tried to calm the room. She said these things happen sometimes. She said we could resolve it quickly. Nina spoke then. Her voice stayed calm and clear. She said there was no misunderstanding. She said I had never given Eric legal authority to sell the house. She said I had also been advised not to sign a document that gave away control. She said the closing could not move forward today. Eric looked at me like he expected me to rescue him with a soft answer. He said we had discussed selling. He said I had agreed in principle. Oh, he said I was changing my mind at the last minute. I kept my hands folded on the table. I said I had never agreed to a sale. I said I had agreed to think. I said thinking is not signing. The closer asked me directly if I wanted to sell the house today. I said no. The room went quiet. It was not dramatic noise. It was the quiet of a plan stopping. The buyers' faces changed. The young man asked Eric why he had told them the house was ready. The young woman asked the agent why she had let them schedule inspections and make arrangements. The agent's smile fell apart in small pieces. She started talking about assumptions and family communications. Eric tried to speak over them. He said it was still possible. He said I just needed to sign and we could complete the sale right now. Nina placed my folder on the table and opened it. She did not slam anything down. She simply organized the moment. She told the closer that I was not only refusing this sale, but also protecting my future from similar pressure. She said my late wife had arranged certain protections for me, and I had now activated additional protections through proper channels. Eric stared at Nina and asked what she meant. Nina said my wife had left a separate property and a separate account to me alone. She said the amount was $480,000. She said those assets did not belong to Eric and could not be touched by him. She said I had also placed my assets into a trust structure under my control with clear conditions for any future support to family members. Tanya's mouth opened slightly, then closed again. She looked at Eric like she expected him to fix it. Eric looked back at her like he had just learned the floor was not solid. Eric asked me why I had not told him about any of that. He said family should be open. He said I was hiding things. I said I did not hide anything. I said I kept my private affairs private. I said he did not ask what I needed. I said he only talked about what he needed. The closer asked Nina if the trust was real and properly recorded. Nina said yes. She said she had confirmation. She offered the closer the official reference information. The closer nodded and said he would note it, but that the trust was not even required for today's decision, because the owner's decision was enough. The buyers stood up. The young man said they were done with this process. The young woman said she felt misled and embarrassed. They looked at the agent and said they would speak to their own advisor about next steps. They walked out, leaving the key ring on the table as if they did not want to carry anything from this room. The agent followed them in a hurry, speaking softly, trying to repair what could not be repaired in that moment. Eric's confidence drained fast. He asked the closer if we could pause and continue later. The closer said he could not continue without a signed authority document or without my willing signature on the sale itself. He said there was nothing to pause. He said the file would be closed for today. Tanya tried to speak again. She said I was making a mistake. She said I would regret being alone. She said the house would become too much for me. I told her I had already arranged my living situation. I told her I did not need her to manage me. I told her I needed space and respect. Eric's voice got sharper. He said I was punishing him. He said I was taking away his future. He said he had plans and responsibilities. I said he should not build plans on property that was not his. I said that was not responsibility. I said it was assumption. Nina gathered the papers calmly. She did not look pleased or angry. She looked finished. She told the closer we were done and thanked him for keeping the process correct. I stood up. I looked at Eric once. I told him I would speak with him later through calm channels when he could listen instead of push. I told him I was not signing anything under pressure, not now, not later. Eric started to say something, but the closer was already standing too. The closer said the meeting was over and asked everyone to leave the room. I walked out with Nina. The hallway felt cooler than the closing room. The sounds of the office were small and normal. A phone rang at a distant desk. A printer made a soft whirring sound. In the lobby, my phone vibrated. Nina had sent a short message confirming that the trust and filings were recorded and active. I slipped the phone back into my pocket and kept walking. Behind me, through the glass wall, I could see Eric still seated, his hands spread on the table like he was trying to hold on to something that had already moved out of reach. Tanya stood beside him, very still, like she was finally realizing that confidence is not the same as control.